Hey there, folks. We're going to be talking today about one of the controversies that has dominated headlines. I don't know if the average user actually has paid attention, but it's certainly been in the media, and that's the Facebook trending feature. What is the Facebook trending feature? It's not your news feed. People seem to sometimes think that this has something to do with their news feed. No. You don't see anything that says trending on your phone because you use Facebook on your phone. It doesn't exist on mobile. So we're talking about a feature that exists only on the desktop. So let me show you, excuse me, I'll walk over here. I'm going to show you my screen. Now, hopefully you can see, oh, look what's trending on my screen. What is trending is Ben Carson. What about Ben? Ben Carson and his work leading the VP selection discussions with Donald Trump. Number two, somebody has had a penis transplant, the first penis transplant ever. There it is, first transplant in the U.S. And the third item that is trending is a Supreme Court case. For my privacy friends, not the Spokio case, which we've all been following to find out how the court would handle this important case about whether there's harm when a people search company has the wrong information about you. Are you harmed just because it's wrong, or does there have to be actual harm? But anyway, why did I point out those three? Well, Carson, kind of a conservative thing. Penis transplant, kind of a controversial thing, perhaps to have, and Supreme Court decision. So what was the flack? Here was the flack. The flack was that an anonymous employee who was a contractor who worked on helping put together this trending claimed to Gawker that there was bias against conservatives. Facebook denied it, and that probably should have been the end of it, frankly, because if you worry that one employee at a major company says something anonymously, sometimes it's a great way to get some information that may be suppressed. But when everyone denies it, you might want to think about whether that's just an employee. But let's look at the facts. So CrowdTangle, an app, a service that helps monitor what's actually going on Facebook, tells us that the most powerful brand in the media in terms of getting engagement and likes and shares on Facebook, guess what? Fox News. Not even close. So if there was some sort of institutional bias, right? We know Facebook employees perhaps are West Coast, Silicon Valley. Mark Zuckerberg has certainly been on the more liberal, progressive side of the equation. So if there was some institutional bias, we might see it showing up where it actually made some difference. Well, turns out not. Now, here's what the trending news feature actually is. We had something like this. Many of you remember that I was a senior VP at AOL, and our group was integrity assured. So we had privacy, but we also had content standards, advertising policy, accessibility, and other issues. And we had features like, here's what's popular in AOL search. Now, the team that put this together was using an algorithm, was using an analysis that would tell them and surface the types of searches that were the top ones. But guess what? Humans had to go in and clean it up because it was, well, sometimes a porn link would show up, and we didn't want to show you that. You know, that penis one that we just talked about here that Facebook says, well, that's what's showing up. We're going to show it. At AOL, we would have been, oh, no, we don't want to have that sort of information, even if that's a story that's trending. Sometimes spam links that were getting a lot of clicks might show up. That's not really trending searches. So we would do some hygiene without any particular ideology to actually make sure that we were putting together. So it's interesting to see the backlash, because we all know that the news feed is very curated and personalized based on our individual likes. But evidently, the critics looked at this as a pure algorithm that was just displaying the accurate results. Now, many of our academic colleagues who are concerned about algorithmic discrimination tell us there's always discrimination and human bias in algorithms. The very categories that you create, carry bias. But I think this flap shows that when we think about algorithms, we really need to think about it in two separate ways. Omer Tanay professor and IAPP senior leader and I, who often write together, have a paper for the upcoming privacy law scholars. And what we try to do is we look at this debate about algorithms, where the argument is that they're often a black box and that they're potentially discriminatory. And we say, you know what? It's true that the call for transparency has a place, but it may not be useful for consumers to be looking at code. It won't be useful for experts, frankly, even to try to decipher code. That's not easy to do. It's not feasible. It's probably not useful. What we do probably want to know as a very high-level distinction is, when is this an editorial situation? When is this, hey, I understand that the New York Times front page has not been created by a pure algorithm, right? There is wisdom and ethics and the thinking of editors who are making decisions about what to show up. Here, this trending feature, the perception was that it was a much more machine-like raw analysis. And the concern that maybe there was human editing, and not only that, it came from humans who had a particular bias, hit a raw nerve. Now, again, it seems quite clear that the story wasn't true. Facebook put out its very extensive guidelines that, again, show that it is primarily a code-based algorithm, with certainly human editing focused on trying to clean it up to make it accurate and presentable without any particular ideology. But for those of us who are thinking of algorithms, it might make sense to think about dividing the world into, here are algorithms that are being edited, where we have an opinion, where we have a machine and editors and others trying to influence what I see and what I understand and what I do. And it's important to understand that. Now, there may be good reasons to do that. There may be reasons why we want to be correcting for some sort of terrible bias, but we ought to know that here's what was accurate and here's what's not. You know, a good example might be what we see happening in search. We've had a number of instances where ads seem to be biased. Professor LaTanya Sweeney demonstrated that she could detect one company showing ads that did well on Google offering criminal background checks. And they offered these criminal background checks when names were proposed. And unfortunately, the humans of the world seem to respond to more of the African-American names being offered as do a background check. And those were the results, therefore, that were almost always showing when you searched for an African-American name, you searched for general names, Caucasian names, you were more likely to get a whole random set of, here's why you might want to look out that information. So Google made a decision, oh no, we don't want that, right? And ad policy, companies have ad practices. In fact, Google recently said, payday loans, a lot of controversy over those. We're not going to accept any ads for online payday loans. Boom. And we expect that to be the case. But when it comes to search, Google and other search engines are much less interested and willing to edit that pure search algorithm. Now again, there's a lot of wisdom in there, and certainly there are humans involved, but the expectation is that when I search, I'm getting what are the most relevant results by this algorithm trying to figure out what I actually want to see. And when biased results show up in search, we don't see them edited. For a very long time, I think this is still the case, when you search the word Jew, you got Klan type results. It turns out people who are interested in Jewish or Judaism search those terms. The people who are searching Jew, unfortunately, were clicking and wanted white supremacist type sites. Google didn't change that. They added a little disclaimer. Hey, look, here's why this is happening, which they worked out with the Anti-Defamation League, but they've continued to have those results show. A study recently showed that, unfortunately, if you search for unprofessional hairdo, lots of the sites that come up discussing this are all critiquing the afro as unprofessional. Now, offensive, for sure. What should Google do? Should Google say, oh, well, that's not right. That seems to be a bit bigoted. Let's clean those results and not show them. That would probably be a disservice. We want to see what's out there, including the ugliness in society. We may decide in the editorial and policy world that we want to correct for this because we don't want this type of result to be the case. But we want to see, when we expect the algorithm to be giving us results, we want to see what's out there. we may want to take a policy decision after we see those results. I'll close with this, and Omer and I talk about this in the paper. Many may have seen the Business Bloomberg article over Amazon, and where in the U.S. does Amazon provide the same day free, I think like 2 hours almost, delivery, and where don't they? They did a study, and it turns out the code, the algorithm that has shaped where Amazon puts these out has focused on places where there are lots of prime users. Those are the folks that are getting the faster service more quickly. Unfortunately, in many cases, it paralleled racial divides. You would see wealthier white areas being on the list and getting the service, and others currently not. Now, Amazon, to its credit, socially responsible, said, you know what, we're going to serve those areas, and we're rolling it out as fast as possible. Should the algorithm that Amazon used have automatically changed and said, look, here's the results. Here's where you should economically roll out your service? Of course not, right? The algorithm was accurate. Then Amazon, and frankly another company, might have gone another way. So you know what? This may be the most profitable instant way for us to roll this out, but big picture, we want to serve all people equally, and we're going to make that decision. We probably don't today hold supermarkets to that standard, right? We see people providing services in certain areas. We know we need incentives to get them to serve the broader community. Interesting that just a couple of years ago, Amazon was viewed as a threat to local business. Do you remember the debates over Amazon and local bookstores? A couple of years ago, local communities or local businesses might have said, great, our industry, our local community isn't going to be hurt by internet companies coming in and taking the business. Look where we've come, where that's actually not the case today. There may be some business folks, frankly, who still believe that. But today, this instant service is viewed as such a social utility that Amazon got letters from members of Congress and complaints, wait, why aren't you doing this? And they reacted fairly. But the question of whether or not an algorithm is biased, right? Was this algorithm biased? It gave Amazon accurate information. Look, here's where you have more prime users. Here's what the economics are. And then Amazon made a policy decision. And so I think one of the things we're hoping to flesh out is a step beyond the notion that algorithms are all discriminatory, but rather there's a category of algorithms that are curated, that are editorial, and leaving aside information, on a Facebook or on a page. If somebody's going to be changing what I see or what it communicates to me in this world of wearables or the Internet of Things or smartwatches and so forth, if you're nudging me in some way that is supposed to be tweaking my behavior, I really want to know about that. And if you're simply giving me results, which may or may not be socially good results, I want to understand that, and then I may want to go along with it because this is accurate and I don't want to make the change, or I may have a social reason to rectify that. Now look, if it's illegal, build that into the algorithm, right? The algorithm shouldn't give us illegal results where I end up violating the law or something where there's a clear social consensus. But in a lot of these other areas, like should Amazon open up, deliver everywhere without any regard to race, or can it follow the economics? Again, kudos to Amazon for deciding to do the socially favorable thing, but clearly not the decision that every company would have made, and so clearly not something that necessarily would be built into the code, but rather would be a social and a policy decision. So you'll have to read the paper, which we will present at the Privacy Law Scholars Conference in a couple of weeks, and hopefully publish soon. Omer, Tanay, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks for joining us for FPF's Facebook Live.